Hello, welcome to Cat's Treats. It's Barbin time. The Barbie movie is now out in theaters. It is going to be the first movie to make $1 billion. It is the cinematic event of the season. I am not, in fact, sponsored by the Barbie movie in any way. It is simply the most excited I've been for something in the theaters since Cats. So, to celebrate, we're gonna make a Barbie cake. Now, for years, I have seen a ton of Barbie cakes floating around the internet, but I've always been kind of unhappy with them. And the main reason for that is you can't eat the Barbie. I've always wanted to eat Barbie. So, not only are we going to make a dress out of cake, we will in fact be making an edible Barbie doll as the centerpiece. So, let's get started. I did a little bit of brainstorming, and the only concept I had for a Barbie flavored cake that seemed like it would be good was to do a kind of strawberry marshmallow situation. So I'm going to be using these free tiered cake pans to make that Barbie ball gown dress shape. So I'm loosely basing the cake part of this recipe on Preppy Kitchen's strawberry cake recipe, and I feel totally fine and valid in doing that given that he has over 3 million subscribers and I have 1,000. I can steal from him as much as I want. I'm going to start putting all of the dry ingredients into a bowl. So that's going to be 2 3/4 cups all-purpose flour, 2½ teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, a dash of salt, and 2 cups of sugar. Give these a little whisk to combine. And now we can move on to our wet/fresh ingredients. Now, I personally am against using artificial flavorings in baking whenever possible. So I am going to blend up a pound of fresh strawberries, and then we're going to reduce that strawberry juice into something that's usable in our cake. You can also totally use frozen strawberries for this, but my one recommendation would be to make sure that those frozen strawberries are thawed out and patted dry before you weigh them or blend them. Now, if we just put the strawberry puree straight into the cake, there would be way too much added liquid. So what we're going to do is put it on the stovetop and reduce it down to about 1/2 cup. I'm also going to add a swig of amaretto in here, just because I think a little bit of alcoholic bite and almond flavor is going to bring out the strawberry nicely. I'm going to leave it on medium heat until little bubbles start rising in the center of my strawberry puree. Then I'm going to turn the heat down and wait for the level of liquid to go to about half of what it was initially. All right, it's been about 25 minutes, and see how much the level of liquid has gone down and how syrupy and viscous it is? That's where you want it to be. I turned off the heat for that, and now while it cools, I can mix up the other wet ingredients. I'm going to whip up a cup of cubed softened butter. Add 2 eggs into that. And our strawberry puree from earlier. This is also a good time to add food coloring if you want your cake to be any kind of bright or interesting color, which obviously this is a Barbie cake. It must be pink. I'm going to combine my 2 mixes by adding a bit of one and then the other into another large bowl and mixing them small amount by small amount as I go, just to make sure all of the batter gets mixed together nicely. Once the batter is fully mixed together like this, I'm actually going to do something a little funky and mix in some mini marshmallows. I'm kind of going to fold them in a way not entirely dissimilar from how one mixes macaron batter, but this is just to disperse them evenly throughout the mix. The marshmallows will return later. Once I can tell that those are all incorporated and spread evenly, it's time to place my batter into my pan. I already greased up the baking sheets and put some parchment paper liners in, so it's really just a matter of dolloping it out. Now these can go into the oven at 350 degrees. It's actually a pretty thick batter, so it's going to take a little bit longer to cook than you would normally think, but the small one I'm going to start checking in about 22 minutes, and then after that the others I'm going to check every 5 to 7 minutes or so. Here's the cakes after they're done and taken out of the cake pans and everything. So I'm just going to transfer them onto the final surface and do some sculpting. I'm just going to be spreading some strawberry jam in between the layers. These cakes are going to represent the bottom of a dress for Barbie. So now all I have to do is kind of carve them down into the shape I want, putting back the cut off bits to fill in more empty areas. So we have a shape looking a little bit more like this. Now I'm going to put just a thin crumb coat of icing over this whole thing. Now that this is all covered, I'm just going to set it to the side, wait for the icing to harden a little bit. Now, I'm sure you recall from previous episodes that I have mentioned this is an anti-fondant household. While that is generally true, it was a slight lie, because if you are an absolutist fondant hater, it's only because you have never had good fondant. Most fondant is terrible because they don't bother to flavor it. However, it's actually really easy to make your own fondant, and you can add whatever kind of flavorings you want to it. There's also a couple of circumstances wherein one kind of wants to use fondant over marzipan, marzipan being an almond paste that has a lot more flavor and can serve many but not all of the same purposes. One, fondant is a little bit more flexible than marzipan is, so if you're working with a lot of detail in thin areas, you're going to want more fondant. Two is that fondant starts as a white base, so if you're making really bright or neon or pastel colors like one would be doing for a Barbie cake, you're going to want to do that. Marzipan, due to being made from a light yellow ingredient, starts as naturally a light yellow color. And third is nut allergies. All marzipan is made from nuts, so if you want to account for that, it's good to know how to make fondant for those cases as well. It can be a little bit more inclusive. Anyway, we're making our fondant from marshmallows, which is an easy shortcut over making it completely from scratch and is also going to impart some of that marshmallow flavor onto our strawberry marshmallow cake. We're going to want to set up a double boiler situation like we often do for melting chocolate, just because we really want that gentle, even heat for this. We're going to start by putting about 3 tablespoons of water into the upper pot, just because you never want to put dry ingredients into a heating pot. You want to have some amount of film of water on the bottom. I'm going to slowly put 8 ounces of marshmallows into the pot. I'm going to add about half of the bag and then wait for them to melt down and add the other half while I slowly rotate it around to prevent the sides from sticking. It's going to take 5 or 6 minutes of constant stirring to get your marshmallows to really start to cook down. When you're starting to no longer be able to see any distinct marshmallow-shaped bumps, you can add in any extracts or flavorings you want to use. I'm just going to add a little bit of plain vanilla. And when you have a nice, smooth, albeit very sticky liquid, you're ready to start your next step. I'm going to add in about 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. And you're going to want to stir it around in a sort of folding motion, again like one would do for macarons. Once that's starting to get all mixed together, I'm going to take out a silicone baking sheet. If you don't have something like that, then you can use parchment paper and just tape the edges down onto your table and sprinkle a very generous amount of powdered sugar on my working surface. I'm now going to take that marshmallow and powdered sugar mixture and just dump it right in the middle of this. Do not touch it with your hands at this point. It is very hot and it is very sticky and you will be incredibly sad. And I'm going to sprinkle even more powdered sugar on the top of it while I wait for it to cool. Once it has cooled down enough for us to touch, we can start adding some color to it and kneading all the sugar in to make this a rollable section of fondant. So I'm just going to squirt in a generous amount of food dye, fold it into the center, and get to work kneading it like bread.
I'm trying to predict when you're going to pick it up.
I'm sorry. When the color is evenly distributed and it's no longer sticky to the touch, you can just wrap your fondant up in plastic wrap and leave it out at room temperature for storage. I also made more of it in a bunch of other colors off screen because I love lying and cheating. I'm going to begin rolling out a piece of the fondant to do some ruffle around the base of the dress. This is going to be mostly covered, but I still want to include the illusion of a petticoat. Once I finish that little petticoat border, I'm going to roll out the main body of the dress. I'm just going to spread around some powdered sugar again on my surface to make sure that nothing sticks, and begin rolling this out with my best dressmaking hand. And then I am simply going to drape this, center it over the top, and begin some shaping. This is where being someone into dresses is very helpful because I can kind of know how things are supposed to lie to look okay. And this, with the sugar brushed off, is going to be the bottom of our dress. Now let's start on the top and make a Barbie.
Kat, my darling, what did you have for breakfast today?
Ooh, what did I have for breakfast? Did I have breakfast? I'm going to start by taking another chunk of the fondant and sculpting the torso bodice piece for this dress. So basically, I'm just going to be making a lady's boobies. And once I'm happy with the shape, it's really easy to just stick a little piece of armature wire up the base of that dress and straight down into the cake to make it nice and secure. And now that I have a better idea of the scale, I can start sculpting the head and neck area. I actually think that doing human figures is a lot easier than people expect it to be or give it credit for. I always start with heads in profile to get an idea of the shape down. I just think that that's a little bit of an easier way to get the angle. And from there, it's really all just pinching and squeezing until you have an approximate head shape, and you can fix the details after it's placed on the rest of the cake. I really think it's not entirely dissimilar from like making a little me on your Wii menu. You just have a little bit more manual control. Just kind of stick it in there. Hair is also going to be some colored fondant that I'm just going to roll out and cut into strips to apply. I'm going with a my skin tone and my hair color Barbie, both because it's the stereotypical Barbie, and also like, I don't know, I just feel like it'd be very uncomfortable to eat a Barbie that's not the same color as me. I don't want to elucidate like all of the implications that I think would be problematic, but I think it would be problematic somehow.
You could get CEO Barbie and eat the rich.
I could! Unfortunately, I got into such a frenzy of sculpting that I kind of forgot I was supposed to be recording a video for a bit. But all of it is pretty simple stuff, just in terms of get your basic shapes down and then just stack things on top. If you need to add more detail somewhere, you can just take a little piece of fondant, wet it slightly, put it into the area where you want it to go, and just gradually smooth it down with a spoon so it blends in with what's already there. Now that I have the dress all bedazzled and all of the base decoration done, I'm going to start on the facial features. I'm basically going to make her eyes out of two tiny balls of white fondant, which unfortunately look kind of indistinguishable from my sparkles on the plate. Cover the upper half of those with some blue for the eyeshadow, and then place it onto my Barbie. It looks a little like a Dune character right now, but we're gonna fix that with some highlights and lowlights. I'm going to add the world's tiniest little dots of black as pupils and eyelashes. See? Way better. Way more human looking. I'm doing pretty much the exact same thing to draw on the mouth with the same tiny little brush and a bit of food coloring. She's looking gorgeous, but to give a little bit more dimension, I'm going to add some more shading with that same tiny detail brush. And lastly, I'm popping a little bit of luster dust onto the parts that I want highlighted. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Barbie.
Are you ready to eat Barbie?
Yes.
We're gonna start with eating her ass.
All right.
It's so adorable and pink, look.
Yeah, it's the most pink cake I've eaten before.
It is time.
Good.
Mm. I really like the kind of light strawberry flavor of the cake with the really intense
bit of strawberry jam that hits in between the layers.
I was not expecting the strawberry jam.
Mm-hmm.
Big fan.
And again, this is the best way to make like actually good fondant. Because if anyone says that they hate fondant when you make a cake like this, it's like, oh, do you hate marshmallows? And no one hates marshmallows. Is it time for me to chomp her? Because I really want to just chomp her.
So, Ken, are you ready to go see our movie?
Yeah, Barbie. After eating all this Barbie, I want to see more Barbie.
They said, move this way if you're here to see Barbie, and like everyone who's wearing pink just stepped out of the normal line. All right, we saw the thing. I did indeed try twice at the Barbie movie.
And I'm just Ken.